hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator.
All right, welcome back to the next episode of the BC Law Just Law podcast. I'm Tom Blakely. I'm here with Samantha Beyar, Jim Fiore, and Eddie Ward, who's joining us. So for this episode, we want to introduce ourselves. We want to keep it light. You know, we're going to kind of talk about what's going on in school, our experiences, and discuss the topic of Reddit versus reality. So as many people know from their experiences, the Reddit law school admissions is a place I'm sure many of us have spent too much time just figuring out. Getting into law school, what law school's about, strategy, and we kind of want to debunk a lot of, the myths that are out there. We're gonna kind of put our Snopes hat on today and try to disavow people of any illusions. Talk about our experiences at BC Law, and kind of let everybody know a little bit more about each other. There's no formal topic today, as there so often is. We're just gonna chat, nice chit chat here. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Let's have you guys want to introduce yourselves, talk about how 1L's going, and take it away.
Sure, I can go first. So I'm Sam, and I'm really enjoying 1L so far. My friends make fun of me because I say I want to be a 1L forever. I don't think that's a popular sentiment. It's obviously really hard work, but it's nothing that I didn't expect in relation to the schoolwork. And I think everything else has just been it's just been an environment I've really been able to thrive in. So, yeah, 1L's going pretty good.
Yeah, I'm Jim, and I'm also a 1L, and I have to agree with Sam. I am really enjoying 1L, and, to echo what she said, it's a lot of hard work, but I feel like there was so much expectation of hard work in law school. You hear that so often going in that it was kind of, I'm just enjoying it so far, but I don't know if that's like kind of an odd opinion just because I do like the classroom experience, but it has been nice.
It's cool.
Hey, I'm Eddie. I'm also a 1L. I'll be a little bit more of a realist. 1L year it's not, going to the circus or Disney World.
I thought it was the Disneyland of law schools.
It is you're right. So as far as law schools goes, it is like Disneyland. I think the workload has been pretty manageable. I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed or drowning, and getting to make connections with people here has made it an invaluable experience so far.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, so for me, I'm a 2L, so I'm a little getting long in the tooth, as they say. But being a salty 2L, I mean, I kind of look back at my 1L, and I would sort of echo the same sentiments. I mean, I feel like a year ago now, I mean, I know my experience with COVID and everything like that's a little bit different, like in terms of like the class this year versus my class, there's obviously some points where things are different, but like generally speaking, I remember coming into law school and, I think the pop culture and like the Reddit and all the stuff that you see online, it sort of hypes up the fear factor a little bit. You kind of feel like I'm going to just be in like a windowless room surrounded by case books for hours. And, that's it, and that wasn't the case. I mean, I remember getting started at BC Law, and I think, we're not being like paid to say this. I mean, it's honestly the truth. Like that I guess I can speak for myself, but it sounds like a similar thing to what, everyone else is saying. Is like, when I got started, I was a few weeks in the law school. And I was like, this is actually all right. Like, I really like this. It's actually not that bad. Just read and go to class and get involved. And it's actually really good. Like if you like the law and you like the issues and you like everything, like I think my professors were great. And it was really good. And so like looking at me now, going through 2L where you pick your classes and you choose your own adventure to a certain extent. And obviously, careers and OCI and all that stuff is something that weighs heavily on everyone. It's a really great experience. It's a really great community. I mean, I know, and this is sort of speaking to my 1L experience, which is when we didn't really spend much time on campus. Like, in fact, you couldn't. Like, our schedules were done in such a way that like only a limited percentage of the school was here at any given time because it's in order to sort of social distance and everything like that. Sorry for looking at my phone, just trying to see if there's any big doings here to talk about. No, but like so it's like we wouldn't like go to the yellow room. We wouldn't no one went to the library because like they had like caution tape on the tables, like 2 at a table, and so you just kind of would go home. But even in that environment, I thought that things were it was just a warm community. Like the class size, just the dynamics, like everything was really good. And so I think that's even more so this year coming to my 2L year. And I had this conversation like last September. It's like it kind of feels like I'm going to a different school to some extent because like now we can hang out, we can see each other. Like, this is just different, and it was great. And I think that it's been really good, but it's hard work. I mean, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, I know you guys had like your your oral arguments that you've been
yeah.
presenting. You guys want to talk about that? All the 1Ls are in suits. That's how you know who's a 1L. It's like everybody's dressed to the nines.
Yeah.
You know, we're coming in heavy to present to the First Circuit Court of TAs in LP. How's that going?
Yeah, I mean, before we get to that, I just there are tough moments. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
all
right,
easy.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
finals week, those
Right,
2
it's
weeks
tough.
and the week before,
Right.
like that's a stressful time.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
working, like you could be working 12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
You still want
Right.
to take your breaks, but there are tough moments.
Yeah, I don't know how I would be during those stressful moments though if I was at a different school.
Yeah.
I feel really lucky that I have professors who I feel like would go to the ends of the earth for me here, and career services really supporting me. I kind of use them as my mom.
Yeah.
I'm like, what should I wear to this networking event?
Aw.
What should I do?
Do you want to shout out anyone particular in career services?
Yes, Jill.
Jill, okay. I think is Jill new? I don't think I've met Jill. I want to shout out Naomi. Naomi's really great. Everybody there is great. They're
Everyone's
all
great. Yeah, they're all
Sue
great.
Lim and Chris Teague.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
great.
Go there.
It's
Go
a
there the
great
first month of
squad.
school.
Yeah. But I think the other thing too, like looking back at my 1L, there was certainly like the there's like this mission creep of like, oh, I gotta apply. Like you'd hear of like one guy that has a job and that just sort of would be destabilizing. But I think it's not. Everyone's gonna be fine. Like I think that's the thing, and it's easier said than done. It's easier looking back and thinking that than I guess maybe. I mean, you guys are like on the doorstep of OCI this summer. I know that's stressful. Do you want to like? I mean, you guys are more sort of recent to that than I am. Like, how are we feeling about that? I think Meet the Employers was last night.
Yes.
So that was I saw the name tags being printed out at CSO. How was that experience?
It was something. I mean, it was a really great opportunity to learn about firms. And then in that way, you're kind of trying to see which firms maybe you connect with more and what size firms you want to do. You can talk, if you're considering both transactional and litigation, you can kind of ask the attorneys there who are most of them are junior associates, so
Right.
they're not too far removed from where you are as a 1L.
Right.
So it's really nice to hear from them as well. So I think overall is a good experience. It just is. It kind of feels like speed dating a little bit, so it is a little nerve-wracking. But I think if you go into it knowing that and knowing what to expect, I think you can get a lot out of it.
Now, were all three you guys there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I did not go, so I'm much more interested in GovPI specifically. And there's actually going to be a government night this next week specifically. So my experience in looking for GovPI jobs has been pretty great so far. All the law schools in Boston, they have the Massachusetts Law School Consortium. So when you're applying for summer jobs, getting to apply through one portal, through everything from the attorneys general to public defenders to children's rights groups, was really amazing. And you were able to get ahead, like in the first few weeks of January, to have your interviews. And I was able to line up an internship by mid-February. So it was a really great experience if you're interested in GovPI. I know we focus a lot on big law at BC, but there's definitely a strong showing for public interest
So
as well.
what in terms of this summer, what do you guys you'll know what you're doing this summer? Yeah, if you want to talk about that at all, I know that's
so I've accepted a position working at the Massachusetts Attorney General's office.
Okay, cool.
In their Energy and Environment Bureau.
Very
so
cool.
We'll be enforcing the environmental and climate laws of the Commonwealth. But Massachusetts also has some suits against the federal government to make sure that we get let out of schools. And reducing pollution for historically marginalized communities. So it's great to be able to work both on a local and a national scale right in Boston.
That's very cool. And I imagine I know from working in government, there's a sort of a firewall between, the politics of some of those offices and, of course, the work. And I mean, right now you have Attorney General Healy is, it looks like, in line for governor this November, and there's candidates, to replace her. They're going to be on the ballot, who I think either just came to the school. I think there was like some kind of forum where the AG candidates
They're
were
coming
here.
soon. I think next week, maybe.
Yeah, that should be really interesting. So that's good. How about you guys? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, I accepted a position at Cabot Corporation in Boston. So they're a global chemicals company. So I'll just be in their in-house department, and I think I'll be doing a variety of things, whatever they have coming down the pipeline. So
very nice, very cool.
That,
All right.
Yeah, and I got my internship through the same program that Eddie was talking about, so I got it pretty early, which is very nice and less stressful. coming around this time of year, and I'm going to be working at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so I'm really excited.
That's very cool. Yeah, so last summer, my 1L summer, I worked at the WilmerHale Legal Services Center at Harvard. I was in the Veterans Clinic, which is it's a clinical experience, which obviously, people, do clinics in law school, and that's a really cool opportunity. I really enjoyed it. I felt really fortunate. I mean, I know there's people who do a variety of things 1L summer. I mean, it's a really unique time in terms of where you can land. I really enjoyed working with my veteran clients. It was just very meaningful work. I got to work on one case in particular. It's actually gone up now to become a potentially precedent-setting case with respect to basically the survivors of LGBTQ veterans being denied, widow benefits on the basis of the fact that the VA requires you to have been married for 8 years to qualify, except in many states it's impossible to have been married for 8 years at this point. And, actually myself and someone who's become a good friend of mine actually met working at that clinic. He's at another law school in the area, wrote the brief arguing that, for the government to deny benefits on the basis of substantive law that was deemed unconstitutional, of course, in Obergefell, that decision to withhold those benefits in and of itself is unconstitutional. And now it looks like that's going to become a pretty important case, which is a cool experience. And I think everybody has a really, unique experience 1L. And, you come back from, being in house, being at businesses, being in government, AG's offices, DA's, and things like that. And it's a really interesting time. Obviously you have OCI over the summer, and that is certainly something that weighs heavily on the minds of rising 2Ls. How are we feeling about that?
Ready for it.
Ready? Okay.
We'll see, I've heard a lot about it, but also, despite that, I feel like I still don't know a lot about it.
Yeah,
Right.
So
that's
it's
fair.
kind of like this vague idea that's been talked about, but
Yeah.
It feels like I have a lot of things that are in my control and then I can work towards, but it at the same time feels like nothing is in my control,
Yeah.
and that's a very
Yeah.
uneasy feeling.
And that's
so,
natural. That makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I think everyone's in the same boat in that sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
gotta wait till send in all the applications and then just see what happens and
Yeah.
try not to stress about it.
Yeah, and I think looking back, so for us, it was, I think it was the second. Well, so the first COVID OCI was a very different. It was like in, I think it was like in spring of 2021 as opposed to the prior summer of 2020. So ours was last summer, sort of normal timeline, all remote. Is it remote for you guys? Do you know, or is it
Yes.
back to okay? Which I think helps. So like I was like the first class to have like a traditional OCI that was remote. Which I mean, I think there's some people like myself who would argue that sort of if you're very because people interview very different. People have different sort of interpersonal strengths. The way you can communicate. Like some people have like really great resumes, and then you go get in front of the recruiter, and they're like, if your person, I was just meeting with someone at a firm a few days ago who was telling me about this. Like, there's some people who look like rock stars on paper, and then you don't quite, you're a little flat in the interview versus people who have, a resume that's, maybe, I don't know, something that can get lost in the stack, but they're just like rock stars in person. When you're doing it remotely, I've always sort of felt like, for those of us who, feel like you communicate well in person, it kind of makes everything a little two-dimensional. But at the same time, it's much more convenient, I think, than everybody just like getting all dolled up and schlepping into the school like it used to be, years ago. But yeah, I mean, for us, it was, looking back on that experience, it was interesting. I mean, it was definitely something where, some people go home over the summer, which is many different places throughout the country, and you're doing it remotely, and it's a whirlwind experience. But if you just like network well and you kind of keep your head about it really helps a lot. Like I know it's definitely a stressful time. I don't think anybody would tell you that it's not. It obviously is. Yeah. But if you just network well and make good connections, there's a lot of things that are because like grades, to a good extent, you're getting there. It's not necessarily in your control. Like they're going to do what they're going to do with the stats, as it were. But if you network well, you prepare. Like there's a lot of things you can do that are in your control that help. But nonetheless, I mean, it's a stressful thing. I think people would be lying if we're like, no, it's chill. Like we're just kicking it, But But I think BC law, from my experience, and you guys can talk about your experience. I mean, maybe it's a little bit different this year. I mean, there's in-person events. We didn't have any in-person events last year because there were no vaccines yet. But I think they prepare you well. You kind of know what to expect, generally speaking. Like, I mean, how has that been for you guys, like leading up to this? Like, what's that been like, sort of getting ready?
I think the biggest thing I would advise is just like go to the career services office as early as possible. Even if you don't have any specific questions, I think it's just better to hear it from them, and you kind of get the idea of like how the process works rather than hearing rumors here and there about, oh, this person has an internship lined up already, and you're like, oh, like I didn't even apply to an internship yet. Like,
Yeah,
what am
it's
I
stressful.
supposed to
Yeah.
do? So definitely, they're great. So definitely go there.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I went into Jill's office the other week, and I was just like, this is what I'm doing to prepare for OCI. Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything I should be doing that I'm not? And that was really helpful for me just to make sure that I'm doing everything I should be doing.
That's good. Yeah, that's really cool.
Any good tips you want to share?
She said network and try your best.
Yeah. So, and a lot of it is you kind of have to recognize it's not all in your control. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I was talking to a professor here recently who's he's seen them all come and go. And he told me, he goes, Tom, he goes, this hiring, it's like an algorithm. And I was like, that's really true, because there are, I mean, to just speak candidly about the way that this thing works, like in retrospect, I mean, I learned a lot about the process. I did a lot of networking. I talked to a lot of people, and it's very much, I think we can all agree, unlike any other hiring process you'll go through. Like, I think where, you network a little bit, you send in your resume, you make it look nice, and they, it's a very, it's like an assembly line in some ways. I know a lot of people go into career services. There's of course this Google Drive with the GPAs and the curve and everything. I know people get all stressed about that. I was just having dinner with a buddy the other night, and he was telling me, he's like, oh, dude, I think like the top 5%, it's gonna be like 3 points. I'm like, dude, just calm down. Like it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be all right.
I think like I think one of the things that unsettles me too is that we're all these like great like dynamic people that are multifaceted,
and you feel reduced to a number, right?
Exactly. You feel like you're trying to be squeezed into a box to get a job.
Yeah.
And that's a little unsettling.
So I was at a firm downtown the other day. We were chit-chatting. I was catching up with somebody who works, well, won't name the firm or the guy, but we were, talking about recruiting. We're talking shop. And he tells me, he goes, Tom, he goes, here's what it is. And the thing I think is funny is all these people talk about like, oh, you're all in a stack of resumes. Like they're printing these out. Like we're like mailing them in, and there's like this stack of paper, and there's like the one guy who got like fancy card stock. Like, people are doing that now. But he's like, well, what happens is you're all in this stack. And the easiest way for me to cut the deck, which is a gambling term, which I thought was ironic, we're cutting the deck. Yeah. Like we're at like Encore. I was at Encore after OC. I was like, oh God, I got to de-stress. But no, I didn't do any of that. But he's like, okay, well, you've got like 200 people that apply, or whatever the number is, and of course, it's not necessarily that they want to reduce you to a number. It's just that's the easiest way for them to be like, all right, well, who do we want to talk to? And it's like, we're going to, it's not necessarily always like hard and fast, but it's like, all right, if you have higher numbers, it makes it easier to advance in the process. But one of the things that everybody tells me, and I can't like overstate, or I don't know if I can't understate or over, the bottom line is I can't tell you enough from my experience. Networking is just critical, because if you make the right connection with the right person, and this is, what I've been told, I'm sure you all hear this too, like that can be he walks down the hall and is like, hey, give this guy, see about them, give them a look. And he's always like, yeah, that can, that'll get you a screener. And then you get in the screener, and, and I think that's the thing. I've always been of this mindset that like, I just want to get in the room. Like, just let me get in the room and just let me give him the sales pitch, let me show him what I got, and then from there, just, there's I think oftentimes a lack of equality of opportunity in terms of like, well, if I'm just a number, or if it's just like, daddy's calling the partners, like if you don't have, which isn't that widespread, but it happens. Like you're competing against people who sometimes have these advantages, and you want to think about what's under my control. Like networking is really important, because that can be a connection you didn't have that can move you from the waste bin to the bottom of the pile. So it can give you a look, and like that's all that you need is to just be able to have the conversation. It's all really important, I think, to network.
Yeah, my experience has also been that networking is not just a means to an end. Even if it leads to nothing, I've really enjoyed like learning different things about firms just to figure out what I want in a firm, which is, I'm not probably going to have pick of the litter for these firms. Yeah. I'm not going to have 20 offers lined up for me, but it is nice to hear from people.
You got 20 offers. It'll be fine. I've got good vibes about this. One of the other things that we wanted to talk about today is, this topic of, we kind of refer to it as like Reddit versus reality. There's like Reddit law school admissions, Reddit law school. There's like top-law-schools I don't know if that still exists. It did when I was applying. But nonetheless, there's like not only websites, but like There's just a lot of misnomers out there at law school. Places where people talk about law school and like all these kind of fears and like how it works. It's not necessarily accurate. I mean, I actually went to a lecture on campus last night, which was pretty cool. They had this professor. He's like a law professor, but he's also like a what do you call? He's like I think he's like a professor of like religion too, of like theology. He was talking about like, can you prove the resurrection of Jesus using like like applying like the rules of evidence? It was like a really interesting talk, and you had all these undergrads were there, and like you could tell there was like a lot of like pre-law people in the room, and he's like, oh, does anybody know what and it was good because I didn't know half of the things, so he's like, oh, does anybody know like what like simple things like hearsay and stuff like that, and you could tell there were some gunners in the room, like people who were like, oh, it's like, you kind of people who were probably like interested in law school that like go to a lecture like this, and afterwards you could like hear people talking about law school, and it's like just some of the things I think people think are not necessarily always accurate, and it's like, it's just about how it works and kind of like what it's about. And so, I know like when I was applying, I don't know about you guys, like I was on that Reddit law school mission. I was like breaking my phone. I was refreshing that thing so much, and I mean, not necessarily all, I mean, some of this, I mean, look, I'm not going to like sit here and say like it's not true and like you're not going to get good advice on there. I mean, you will, but I feel like it's very narrow, it's like not necessarily telling you the full story. And so we kind of wanted to talk about that. Like I assume we're all kind of familiar with that scene. Like, what do we think are like the biggest kind of inaccuracies that you see?
I think one of them is just beware of like hyperboles, because who posts on law school admissions Reddit or law school Reddit, but like either like the person that absolutely hated their experience and just wants to vent. So someone that says like law school is the worst decision you'll ever make. Yeah. It's like 3 years.
The extremes.
Just absolute hell.
Yeah.
Like, that's just inaccurate. But it may have been for that person, so you got to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I feel like that's true. I feel like one of the things I saw, like right as I started law school or was getting ready to get started, I would read about like these horror stories about how hard it is, and you're not gonna have any time for anything, and you're just gonna like it wasn't necessarily true. And then I got here, and I don't know if you guys had experience too. Like you got a few weeks in law school, and you're like, oh, okay, like I can handle this. This is good. Like,
yeah, so I did not participate in the law school Reddits
Nice.
at all. I was working when I was applying, like working a full-time job, and I didn't have any friends who were applying to law school with me. And I'm a first-generation professional. My parents don't know anything about the law school process, really, so I was kind of a lone soldier on that front. So, to some extent, I think it benefited me that I wasn't as neurotic as some people, checking everything, looking at everything. Don't get me wrong, I was kind of neurotic, but I think looking at those posts and things would have just kind of made it a worse situation for me. But yeah, everything worked out well for me, and I think everyone has a different journey, so it is hard to compare yourself to different people on the internet. Everyone has different backgrounds, so I think you just gotta believe in yourself that you can do everything, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, for sure. No, I relate in the sense like I'm also a first generation college, first generation law school, and there was definitely not, which is fine. I mean, people come to law school from different backgrounds, but you're right. Like, there's not that sort of pedigree, right? There's not like the path has not been paved, and so you have to really, I think, do a lot extra to sort of really understand what the process is like and what the reality is. And I think one of the most common places people are going to go for that's the internet. And kind of going on to those places, and it's easy to kind of fall into a trap and not really see the full picture. But I also think that's like probably good that you were not like guided by purely like just the id of like the law applicant mind that you see online. I mean, I think for me, like I would go on. I mean, I went on a lot because I didn't have like lawyers in the family. I didn't have like another way to really get this information, and it seemed like a lot of it. It's sort of a function of how I think law school admissions works and how law hiring works. It's just very narrow and sort of statistically grounded, and like there's really not a sort of a breadth of not really a diversity of opinion, right? Like I felt like the Reddit law school admissions, maybe it's changed. Well, first of all, the memes were great when I was on it. That's one of the things I remember. The memes, Chabella, like those were just top-notch memes. But like outside of that, to be in all seriousness, I thought that the predominant focus of those websites is like encouraging people to go to either like the highest ranked school or the school with like the highest big law placement for as little as possible, and to do that they would tell you to just go all out on the LSAT and like nothing else in your life matters, which like not true at all. I mean, I do think it's a function of just law school admissions, which is like very much your LSAT and your GPA that, sort of causes that sort of mindset to manifest itself there. And then, with like, and the same thing happens when people talk about like getting a job. It's like, oh, you need to be at the top of your class, which like, it's great. It's great to be at the top of your class. It's nice, get the summa cum laude on the resume and the diploma. But like, that's not the only way to get a job. It's not like if you don't, you're not at the top of your class, you're not going to get a job. Like, that's the thing, is like the other side of that, which is like you're more than your numbers, right? And in getting a job, there's more pathways to your job than just being like at the top of your class and like backing into being like the this like OCI prototype. Like, that's not it. And I feel like you don't get the other perspective. You also don't get, like, if you're interested in like Gov PI or working in the federal government or public defender or JAG or an agency or like anything that's not going to a firm, those voices and those people are not like well represented online.
But I think a good way to counteract that is, because if you are on Reddit and you're reading these stories and you're like, oh, like, what is this? It's not what I expected. Again, like, go to LinkedIn, search BC Law, and like message someone that's like a current 1L or 2L, and like they'll be happy to talk to you. Ask them what their experience was. Ask them like, what was different than you expected. And I think everyone's always been happy to talk.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the case. I don't think it's something people do enough. I feel like you can't do that enough. There's not like a too much with that.
Right.
Absolutely.
I know I'd be so happy to talk to anyone who's
too.
like in that process right now.
Yeah.
Because we were just in it. So
yeah.
it's very relatable.
I've had people email who, like, people watch this podcast. I think like that's or kind of see it online. Like, I think we're all sort of become points of contact. Like, I mean, I get emails from folks that, a couple of weeks ago I was talking to a prospective student, and there's like certainly like an apprehension you feel. Like, I think like they, people almost like very like deferential to you, even though like I'm just a guy. Like, I have no, I'm just you in a couple of years. Like, there's nothing, I'm not, I don't really have any control over anything, but I feel like that it speaks to like the apprehension people have, like, oh, this person figured it out, or this person's like, how do you do that? I have a friend, a good friend of mine from high school, who he texted me last week. He's like, oh, I want to get together. Obviously we graduated at the same time. We're sort of in the same sort of career timeline here. He's worked in accounting for like since he graduated college, and he wants to go to law school now. And he's like, yeah, can I just get a few minutes of your time? I'm like, dude, of course. Like, we used to go to like, math together. Like, let's meet up. And but he's like, I just want to know how it works. Like, what are you supposed to do? But like, I think there's like that sort of fear factor, right?
Because everything's so new. It's
it seems like esoteric. It seems like there's like a game, and to some extent, like there kind of is, but it's nothing you can't manage. I don't think it's anything that like people won't or not like ourselves, and I think like a lot of folks are happy to help you figure out.
And when you talk to a real person, and it's like, oh, they're just a normal person, and they figured it out, so I could figure it out too.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like when I was applying, they had I remember like I was in the process of taking the LSAT, and I was talking to an attorney at a firm, and I was like, oh my god, this LSAT, like it's just, and she's like, you're gonna forget all about that once you're in school, and I was like, no, like that's no, and it's like, no, true, like it's just, you have to kind of listen to folks and seek out those conversations and get the straight dope, because otherwise you can kind of, and there's an opportunity cost too. Like, if you're only getting your information from a place that like it considers a very narrow path, like you're not going to hear about other areas of the law and like other places people work and other people's experiences, and it makes things very monolithic, which is probably not good in terms of like diversity. Because like if law school was just kids from like families of lawyers that all know, like, it wouldn't be a very diverse place. And I think it's good to be able to have all these conversations and just level with one another. And I think that's really good. And I think BC is a place where that that's really, really well facilitated. I mean, it does really feel like a sense of community to a good extent.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that. I think that on Reddit and a lot of other places, they sort of make law school seem like a very intimidating place where all of your peers are also your competition, which, to an extent can be true, if you're going for, a big law job. But I haven't felt that at all. I really it's a very collaborative environment. And, part of the reason is because I'm interested in Gov PI, and like my interest area of environmental and climate law is very niche. It gives me the opportunity to meet and hear a lot of different viewpoints that, I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. Eddie, what kinds of, because that's a really interesting path. Do you want to talk about that? Like, what kinds of viewpoints have you heard? Like, what's the pathway look like for that? I mean, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a really interesting pathway because, climate law doesn't really exist for a large part. We actually have a course, climate law, but Anyone who's been following that knows that it, on an international and even national scale, it doesn't quite exist. And so, I don't really have a set pathway of what, my career as a legal professional will look like, because, no one really knows what that looks like yet. So, whether or not I'll be working in government or for a PI group that's, advocating or even suing the government, it's not clear. But I also have a lot of interest in, working in environmental policy. And BC has some really great dual degree programs with different grad schools on the main campus, as well as with Tufts in their urban environmental policy school, which are some great considerations, because I think a lot of people, when they think of law school, they think like, okay, I'm going to be in a courtroom every day after that, and that's not what I want to do. But there's so much more that lawyers do, whether it's like making policy, whether it's, designing how cities are built, and, how to reduce lead in schools or something like that. So, and my experience has been like law school is not a monolith. There are so many different ways you can take it beyond, the narrow pathway of this is big law.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And again, like I think that's sort of the effect, the impact of like Reddit and like only getting your information. You're only sort of hearing that side of things, and I think just generally speaking, there's not, learning about not necessarily just the law, but like the field and the profession and recruiting and career path. Like these are not things I think people know, and the only way you're going to learn more about how things actually work is by having conversations with people and listening to people and going to panels and having conversations. And a lot of the stuff you sort of learn as you go. But I think it's important to do that. It's important to be prepared for, like, look, obviously you don't have to know where you're going to work when you step foot on this campus and for, a long time after that. And you don't have to know exactly what your career is going to look like. And you shouldn't feel like you're supposed to. And like that pressure to, know things that you don't know. Like, I think you kind of have to let that go a little bit and you explore and you figure things out. Like no one's expecting you to, because you're going to have people who come in and be like, oh, I want to do this. I'm going to work here. And if you don't, that's fine too. And I think that I think it sounds a little simple, but just like be kind to yourself. Like it's a law school can be a pressure cooker. It's not like all
Definitely.
fun and games all the time. It's you're gonna work hard. You're gonna do work. You're gonna study and everything like that. But at the same time, like we were just talking beforehand. Like people say like, oh, like the schools say, or just people say, OCI is not like the only time to get a job, and people kind of like scoff at that. And it's like, okay, maybe like if it works out for you, it's like a nice direct and quick way to. If this is like exactly the thing you want to do, well, that's nice when it works out. But it's not like that's it. And I feel like there's like a pressure that people feel, and I'm sure, I don't know if you guys feel it now, like, oh, this guy, what does he know? But it is true. Like, you're going to, law school goes by very quickly, but you're going to do a lot while you're there, and you're going to figure a lot of things out. And, I think there's not only learning what you learn in the classroom, but learning what you learn outside of the classroom. It's about having, I think, the patience and an open mind to see all that, and sort of having the confidence that when you, put your investments in a place like BC Law, again, I'm sounding like a salesman, but I'm not. It is true that, you invest not only your money, but your time, your relationships and what you're going to do over that period of time here. You're going to, have a good experience. You're going to have the resources to kind of come out and put yourself in the position that you want to be in. And you just have to be patient. You just have to think like, trust the process, put your best foot forward, and you'll be okay. It's not like these freaking bar graphs on like law school numbers where it's like, oh, there's this like red dot over here and like there's a yellow one. Like it's not life's not a math problem. I mean, there's parts of law school and like getting a job that, they're going to the stats, they're doing what they're going to do, but that's not it. You meet people, you talk to people. That's not a math problem. That's just that's just life, and you're learning important skills, and those skills are going to carry you through your career. And this is certainly a place where you can do that.
As someone who is interested in going into big law now, I didn't come in going to big law. Like I said, I'm a first gen professional. I had no idea what kind of law I wanted to do. Yeah. And then I took contracts with Brian Quinn, which Ed was also in.
BBQ.
Kind of figured out through contracts, and I would go to Quinn's office hours and just like ask him a bunch of questions just about big law in general, transactional law in general, and I kind of figured out, oh, this might be something I'm interested in and that I want to pursue. And also with the competitiveness of getting big law internships, yes, it is competitive, and sometimes there's a weird feeling like, oh, these people are also want this job that I really want. But I found it way more collaborative, and I don't know if that's a product of just BC in general or if it's the same at every law school, but we're all kind of in this collective small suffering aspect. So I think we're all just kind of trying to help each other be our best.
I think a good connection to make, and so I've have these conversations with other people and like in doing research and things like that. I think it's a common phenomenon these days that there's a big difference between the way people talk online and sort of things you hear versus when you actually sit down with someone. Like, for instance, if you look at like politics, like everybody's, going crazy about this and that. But when you actually sit down and have a conversation, people generally be pretty reasonable, much more than you see on like Twitter or elsewhere. And I feel like the same thing is true here, where you feel like, oh, this is cutthroat, this is so competitive, this is, all these things. When you actually talk to people, you find people are actually much more collaborative, like you're saying. And I think the last point that I'd want to make just on this is, and it's important, we're in this time now where, we're interested in diversity. As I understand, your class is like the most diverse class that, we've had. And I think that takes a lot of different, forms. And obviously, you're going to have situations where people who, are not from sort of like the prototypical like family of lawyers are going to, I think, need more guidance, more help, oftentimes to figure out like, hey, what does this career path look like? What am I supposed to do? How do I, there's like this expression in sports like act like you've been there. And I think for people like myself, like Sam, like others, when you first step foot in law school, it's an intimidating place, like hard to act like you've been there if you haven't before. And it's like, if I could look back and tell myself something, it's like, just reach out to people, like just have conversations, because I think that in order to enhance, diversity in the law in terms of, really every category, but of course, socioeconomic status, like bringing people new perspectives and coming from different backgrounds, and opening some of those doors, I think it's important to be helpful and have conversations and, just get involved, because like you said, there's a difference between, I think the theme of this is there's a difference between what's on the internet and what people are actually talking about in person, which is often much more collaborative. And, you're going to find good opportunities here to try to become who you want to be and have the career that you want to have. And, all told, if you're thinking about BC law, it's a good place to do that. So, nonetheless, I think that's a good place for us to wrap. I think this was good to be able to just talk today. Yeah.
Did we have a closing?
Like,
how would you?
The closing, as I usually what I say, is all right. Well, thank you to everybody for tuning into Just Law. It's been Tom Blakely, Samantha Beyar, Jim Fiore, and Eddie Ward. We're talking about Reddit versus reality. We're talking about the reality of law school from our lived experience. And so, with that being said, we're gonna have a few more great episodes to round out the year coming at you. And other than that, thanks to everybody for tuning in to this one and to this year and everything we've been able to do. And you'll be seeing a lot of us over the next year. And it seems like whoever's coming and going, this thing's in good hands. And it's great we've been able to start this and look wistfully at what it's become. It's been a hell of a ride. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Until next time, it's been the Just Law Podcast. Thank you.